You're watching Fox 21 News at 8, bringing you the most local news. We are Southern Colorado.
March Madness is upon us, but how did all this craziness get started?
Okay, so coming up next, we're going to look at the history of the game of basketball and the championship, which now takes up so much of our attention this time of year.
March Madness is here with the men's basketball NCAA tournament beginning today with two first four games, including a matchup tonight between the Colorado State Rams and the Virginia Cavaliers, and a whole lot more action to follow.
So one of the most exciting times of the year in sports. Now with us right now for the history of all this madness is celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mad
Thanks
history.
for being here. You have your ball here. We're good to go. So where did basketball begin?
Started by James Naismith. Many people know it because Naismith Hall of Fame, right? Basketball.
Yeah.
Right.
And they started to play as a winter sport. That's what they wanted, an indoor sport in a gym. He was actually a theologist by background, believe it or not, and he was learning in the 1890s this new thing called PE, or physical education, in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And the first game had 18 players in what we would consider a half-court game, meaning there was only one basket. So it was a pretty crammed court. And they made only one basket, believe it or not. Only one basket. No backboard to assist, though, so I think that's part of the factor.
Okay.
But what's really fascinating about the start of the game is that it was both men's and women's sport pretty early on. Women's basketball was a thing early on, though the game looked very different. There was no dribbling, so you couldn't dribble the ball early on in the game. And you also had, of course, no shot clock, no three-point shot. There was not even a regulation of how many people on each side. All that stuff was later, including coaching in the game being added, not until 1949. So it took about 60 years because you were not allowed to have coaching in the game. So a very different game back then, but really fascinating.
Interesting.
Okay, so where did March Madness come from, and that term?
Well, in the form of in the flow of developing the game, right? You have March Madness developed in high school, actually, not in college. In Illinois. Now think about this. Today we think about March Madness having 68 teams in the NCAA tournament. That tournament starts in 1939. There was fewer teams at the time, and it grew over time. But before that, you have up to 900 teams in the tournament of high school teams in Illinois. So you think today, when we're talking about adding to like maybe 70-something teams, there's a lot of talk about 900. That's where the term March Madness came from originally, and there was a book written about it, eventually a documentary about it. This was like a legendary high school tournament that was getting a lot of national attention. It wasn't until the 1980s that the term March Madness got applied to the NCAA college basketball tournament. Brett Musburger, who took the term from there. Believe it or not, there was actually a little bit of a trademark issue with that because Illinois had that, but eventually gets worked out, of course, and gets applied to the NCAA tournament. So it's interesting to think that as the game developed, it started in high school and came over to college, and all the March Madness things that you expect in college happened in that tournament too, including my favorite, which is one of the schools that won the entire thing in Illinois, had only an enrollment of 90-something students, and they won the entire tournament. So that kind of stuff, the Cinderella story, right? So it truly carries over very nicely in college. Recently, of course, we've had two number 16s upset number 1 seeds just in the last few years. So it gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about March Madness. Still applies today.
Okay, so locally here, we mentioned earlier, Colorado State, they're going to play tonight. Also, the CU Buffs men's basketball team, they're going to face against Boise State tomorrow night in Ohio to try and get those number 10 seeds in the tournament. So historically now, how have our teams here in Colorado done?
Had some good runs. The Colorado men's basketball team has had 5-6 Sweet 16s, including a couple of Final Fours. The Colorado women's basketball team has had 7 Sweet 16s, including one last year, including recently. And of course, on the Colorado State side, you have 2 Sweet 16s for the men and a Sweet 16 for the women. So they do make some runs. So the fact that we have multiple teams playing, Colorado schools playing on the men's and women's side this week, gives a lot of hope that maybe one of those runs happens again this year to make some history for March Madness.
Love it. That was tons of facts.
I'm fired up, Coach.
I know. Woo. Okay, let's go. All right, Robbie, thank you so much. That was really fun. Okay, love the history. Thanks so much. All right, 8:28, we'll be right back with much more news and weather. Stay tuned.
You're a walk-in encyclopedia.